Heaven Hill Grain to Glass Weeded. This came out a while ago, but the newest batch of these is starting to hit the shelves, and now that all the grain to glass in general, at least where I am, have become far more shelf available and you see them more commonly, I wanted to give this thing a review and see whether or not it's worth considering the next batch, or if you see one of these out in the wild, picking this bad boy up. Previously, we did the grain to glass bourbon. It's actually the one that I like the most profile-wise, or at least when I tried it before. That might change now because he's been open for a bit. They've been able to breathe and all that kind of stuff. But this is the one that I think universally is considered best of the three by most people. I'm a weirdo in that when I tried it originally, I liked the bourbon the most. We'll see if that changes today because 121 proof using the Beck's 6158. And the important thing to note that part of the grain to glass was a weak cork. So each year, Heaven Hill is going to use a different strain of corn for the Grain to Glass series. So that means that the 2024s, you can find them, are going to be this strain, the 6158, and the newest one coming out is going to be a different strain. So that could influence the flavor, change a few things, make it a little more interesting. There's a whole story behind this, but really, what a whiskey producer doesn't kind of know the grain to glass story of the grains they use nowadays. It's so important to a lot of us as whiskey nerds that I think it's unlikely that they don't know where even their most basic products, where that grain comes from. But it is a cool story. The bottle's cool, the cork is neat. Let's see if it's actually worth the $100 MSRP that these things typically command. It's time for 2 Minute Tuesday. As always, we start with color. You can see really rich, binging on mahogany, little red notes in there. Beautiful, beautiful color on this. Now, at 121 proof, and most of these are in between, I think it's like 6 and 7 years of age. If I remember correct, some of them might be a little bit 8, but I think the majority of the blends are all 6 years. I don't know how well you see that, but it's really hanging onto the rim. You got some decent legs coming through, nice and oily. Let's get into the nose. The thing that stands out to me right away is there is a bit of wheat funk, which is something that I really like in certain wheaters, but it is very tamed down. It's a nice kind of sweet note in there, very kind of caramely. Not a lot of fruit though. Some wheaters can be very fruity, and I love that. I'm not getting a lot of fruit on the particular grain to glass here. It's really dominated by like the wheat funk on that kind of caramel note. There's a touch of a little bit of spice in there, some barrel char kind of thing going on, but really it's mostly that wheat funk and caramel. Let's get it on the palate and see how that translates. Ooh. So on the palate, you definitely feel that 121 proof. It lights you up a little bit, gives you a nice Kentucky hug. While I smelled mostly kind of funk and a little bit caramel before, caramel's there. There's a little bit of cherry in there, which I appreciate, and a lot of spice, a surprising amount of spice, and not as much wheat funk as I would have expected on the actual palate itself. I smell it on the nose, but it's not coming through very much in the palate. It's really, really subtle. It's a very like undertone kind of thing. The predominant note is that spice and that caramel and that little hint of cherry. The more I sip it, I'm getting a little bit of like kind of a pie crusty thing in there too. That's also very subtle, much like the wheat funk, but it has this kind of like, not truly bready, but like I said, pie crusty, a little more rich with that caramel and cherry, kind of like a spicy cherry pie with some caramel drizzle on it. I know, sounds weird, but that's what I'm getting out of this. It does have a pretty nice mouthfeel and feels pretty oily and is coating pretty well, which is really, really nice. But the back end is kind of all hot as opposed to spice. Like you're feeling the ethanol in the tail end and not getting much flavor out of it. You're just getting kind of a heat. Overall score for the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass Weeded. I'm going to give this a 67. This one's interesting because it starts me with one thing on the nose. It goes completely different on the palate. Like on the palate, it's kind of wonderful. On the nose, it's completely different. So it's interesting that it's like the nose is one thing. The palate is a like big shift. The caramel that stays there. But we go away from that subtle wheat funk and almost no spice on the nose to like big spicy note up front. That touch of cherry coming through. So very, very interesting shift. This is going to take you for a very different ride between your nose and your palate. It's okay. It's not phenomenal. I feel like we can get as much, if not better flavors and better complexity out of the recent Old Fitz 7 year that came out. And this is 6 to 7 year product as well. It's just 121 proof instead of the Old Fitz's lower proof. I would get her to say that like that's kind of disappointing because this is more expensive. It was in theory more allocated, higher proof, bigger story, a little more hoopla around it, less impressive whiskey. I don't know, man. And maybe I'm not remembering my score on my Heaven Hill or my Old Fitz 7 year very well, but I just feel like this, while it's proofier and it's a bit more in your face, is not as complex or enjoyable as that Old Fitz. So I'd rather go buy that Old Fitz. Plus, honestly, the Old Fitz bottle looks cooler. If we're going to go on that ride, the Old Fitz bottle looks way cooler. But yeah. I don't know. The Grain Glass series is interesting. I don't know that when the new one comes out, I'm going to be super intrigued to buy it, unless the price comes down some, because if it stays at that like roughly 100 MSRP, it's really hard to stomach that, considering that, like I said, I feel like I'd be better off buying a bottle of the Old Fitz or trying to find some other wheated bourbon like the Bardstown Origin high wheat is phenomenally better than this. Like, I would rather have that Bardstown any day of the week than this, and it's cheaper, more available, and better flavor profile. That is my review on 2 Minute Tuesday of the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass. What are your thoughts? Have you had the Grain to Glass? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What do you think it competes with? Is there something that you think it kind of dethrones? And if it's available, it's worth picking up over this other more hyped thing? Or do you think it's one of those things where it's like, no, this was all hype about its allocation and it's totally not worth it as a pour? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. That's like, comment, subscribe. It's literally the best way to help us small whiskey tubers keep doing what we're doing and stay away from those silly Zeobiotic sponsorships. Plus, at 1,000 subscribers, we're going to give away a bottle of each Taylor single. So subscribe, and as always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.